There we go. Rob, if you'll start us off with the third step prayer, sir, on page
I would
60.
love to. Hi, everybody. I am Rob Cave, recovered alcoholic, and we're going to start with the third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage itself, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Thank you, Rob. All right, guys, we are actually on page 63 today. So if everybody will turn to that page. Rob, we're down near the bottom of the page. We left off at next we launched out. We're going to go back one paragraph and say that we found it very desirable.
You got it, sir. So page 63, everybody. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though, if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once.
Yeah, we're talking about taking this third step and saying it out loud. You know, historically, Bill and Dr. Bob would have people actually get down on their knees and give themselves over to the care of a higher power. And the idea was is that if you expressed it out loud, then you were saying it without reservation. It meant something more than if you were just saying it internally to yourself. It was a concept that worked really well. It moved a lot of people, as it has been stated in other books. If you read about the history of AA, people were quite shaken when they went through and did this particular step in some manner or fashion. The idea here too is that this third step was really a stepping off point and moving into the action steps, as we call it, and it was a nice segue into that. And that's what we're about to get into next. But what was felt at once is what they're talking about is this relationship with your higher power. Rob?
Yeah, I just wanted to take everybody over to page 215 for a second. And the reason I want to do that is because here it says the wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea. So our Southern friend had another way. And it's near the bottom of the page. That isn't the way, he continued. The thing I do is to say, God, here I am, and here are all my troubles. I've made a mess of things and can't do anything about it. You take me and all my troubles and do anything you want with me. Does that answer your question? You know, and that's another way of the same idea of the third step prayer, you know, because it's an idea, you know, that we're going to carry with us. Next, we launched on a vigorous course of action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions.
And we're certainly talking about the beginning here of step 4. And there is some words in here that I think are important to kind of underline. One of it is a course of vigorous action. We're not talking about half steps in any shape or form. We once we did do that, we did this unless at once we followed a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. And what we mean by blocking us is that, you know, our old ideas, our prejudices, our resentments, the things that are actually causing us some amount of harm and or ill thoughts and or being somewhat resistant to this open, kind of honest, very deep private effort that has to be made in order to be on step with this program, and to be rid of the things that have been blocking us. I mean, that's the idea. We want to get rid of those things. And it's really true here. The liquor was but a symptom. We really had to get down to the causes and conditions. And what we'll find out as we go along that, resentments, fears, prejudices, and things like that are going to be the things that hold us back. And we're trying to be rid of that. We have to let go. We have to trust. We have to be able to be open-minded and do what is necessary. And it has to be a strenuous effort. This isn't necessarily hard in that it's difficult to do. It's just that you have to really go at it with abandon. Rob?
Yeah, steps 1, 2, and 3 is, am I powerless? Yeah, I'm powerless. As long as you understand what all that is. Step 1, 2, and 3 is just, yeah, Bill did it sitting at his kitchen table. There's no action involved. It's easy to say. Okay, now we have to do some actual work. We have to put pen to paper and get our rear ends into gear. Now, some people say, well, do a step a year. That's ridiculous. Here we're trying to get well. We're trying to remove the blockages that are blocking us off from getting better. Do we want to wait? Okay. If we are convinced that this program will work for us as it worked for the first 100 people, there should be no hesitation on our part. But, and this is the thing, if people, especially responsees, if they're not going about and getting on this, it means that they're not really sure that they're powerless over alcohol yet. So therefore, we have to hammer home, do you have the allergy? Do you have the malady or the obsession of the mind that you cannot stop yourself from taking that first drink? Once you start drinking, can you control the amount you take? This has to be hammered home over and over again. Unfortunately, I don't hear that in the meetings a lot of times, that people are talking about the allergy and the obsession or the malady. So how is a new person who comes into the fellowship supposed to learn this? We carry this message. This is the program. Fellowship is where we meet the newcomer. The book is where the program is. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and a fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsellable goods. Get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of a business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values.
Yeah, and it's a great analogy to business. People do take inventory, and when they do take inventory, there is certain things that are gotten rid of, and they've gotten rid of them because they're not saleable, and they're just taking up floor space. They're affecting or impacting our bottom line. Because we're carrying these goods that are damaged or obviously unsellable. You need to get rid of them to clear things out so that things are actually flowing much better. So a couple of ideas here. You take this inventory of yourself, and we're going to get really into detail here about what that inventory entails. So I won't go into it too much here, but the idea is just to say that there are good reason for people to take inventory, and they just use one example, and that is a business taking inventory of its own self with regard to the goods that it has to sell. And usually this is taken on an annual basis, or sometimes maybe maybe a little bit more often, but nonetheless, at least on an annual basis is when we're talking about doing this. Now, we're not talking about doing a step 4 on an annual basis, so I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole there. The point being is that a good, thorough step 4 really only has to be done once, and then from there you will graduate into kind of at a higher level with your steps 11 and 12. And things should be good to go. But this is really the idea. You're going to take a very personal, very private, very honest inventory of yourself. And the emphasis is on yourself, not of others, but of yourself. Rob?
And honest. We have to be we have to take a look at ourselves and look at the bad stuff that we have. Fact finding is searching, fact facing is fearless. We have to be fearless about this. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations.
Yeah, and this is really where they're trying to emphasize this is what we just talked about. This is about us, not about other people. The misnomer is, and that there is sometimes this pitfall that people fall into, and that is they have to think of blaming other people and really taking inventory of the people that are around you or have impacted your life, that type of thing, in such a way that you think it was them and their actions that caused you your problems. And that's that they're trying to make sure that you are not going to do that. So the emphasis here is not on others. It is absolutely 100%, and I mean 100% on yourself. So this is just a good emphasis paragraph for that. And just as Rob just said, we are talking about honestly doing this, and that's so important. If you're not being honest with yourself, then you're not even really doing your step forward.
Yeah.
Rob?
No, you're not going to get everything that you need to get out. The next paragraph that I'm going to read, if you don't have it highlighted in your book, please highlight it now. Okay, because this is one of the strongest statements you're going to read in this book, and it makes so much sense, and it is very, very, very important. Resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relations, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, we were burned up.
Yes. So a couple of things here. First of all, Rob is absolutely right. Please highlight this paragraph because it is so important. Resentment is the #1 offender. There are others out there that we're going to talk about, and that's going to come up as we go along. But the idea here is and I'll just go over them briefly just so that you can be listening up for them. Those are fears, harms, and conduct. We're going to find out also have an impact, but nothing has as big an impact as resentments. And from it stem all forms of spiritual disease. Now, this is another thing that I think that gets to be kind of confused in some of the statements here. This is not, this spiritual malady is not a symptom of alcoholism. It is a symptom of the human condition, and all people have the potential and or have in some manner or fashion at times suffered from a spiritual malady. And that's what we're trying to overcome. Yes, as alcoholics, we do have a spiritual malady, especially when we haven't tapped into this spiritual higher power, if you will. But others that are non-alcoholics can also suffer from this. And so therefore, I just want to make sure that we do in fact say that the spiritual malady is not a symptom of alcoholism. It's a symptom that alcoholics suffer from, but it's not a symptom of alcoholism. So spiritually sick, we talk about this. We're going to really get into detail here. But what we're really trying to do is straighten ourselves out both mentally and physically. And there is going to be some real good discussion about that going forward. But part of what we're going to be doing is taking those resentments that we have, we're going to identify them, and we're going to put them down on paper so that we can actually get them out, be honest about it, and be very critical of ourselves in that regard as we go forward. And these are the things that we're going to be looking for in order to find those resentments. And that is that first and foremost is our anger, the things that make us angry. The other things that we're going to be looking at is that these resentments have impacted are going to be things like our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, personal relationships. I can tell you that one's going to be a big one, including sex, and where we have hurt or threatened others. We were burned up. So we're going to be looking at that. There's another one that we're going to be talking about here in just a second, with regard to 6 of the things that are impacted by our resentments. And I'll just go ahead and tell you that it's security. That's number 6. So if we were to review it again, the 6 things that are impacted by our resentments are self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, personal relationships. Number 5, including sex. And number 6 is security. So, Rob?
Yeah, Leo, I just wanted to give an analogy right now, if you don't mind. Resentment is the number 1 offender. Resentments are like leaves in a gutter. Now, how are they like leaves in a gutter? Leaves go into the gutter, and what happens is if you get one leaf, it goes to the downspout, and it goes into the downspout and it gets trapped. Well, the water will go into the gutter, will go down the downspout, and with one leaf there, it might slow the water down a little bit, but it's not too bad. We get more resentments, we get more leaves in the gutter. Before long, it clogs the gutter so that no water is going through anymore. So what happens is the water backs up. The water can't get through anymore. Okay, in Canada, what happens in the wintertime? It freezes, the gutters start to expand. It's not a good thing. So they're like resentments. They're blocking us off from God. They're blocking us off from our spiritual or higher power. So what do we have to do? We have to stick our hand into the gutter, start grabbing some of those leaves and removing them. Now, how many times do we have to stick our hand in there to get rid of those resentments or those leaves? Well, we all are different. Some of us will have many resentments. Some of us only have a few. Okay, so we might only have to put our hand in there a couple of times. Other people will have to do it many times. But we have to get our hand into the gutter and remove all those resentments. The only way to do that, put them down on paper. Okay, so I hope that analogy helps some people. If it doesn't, oh well, I tried. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? We were usually as definite as this example. I am resentful at Mr. Brown. The cause is attention to my wife. It affects my sex relations. Okay, I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. Told my wife of my mistress. Affects my self-esteem, fear, sex relations. I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. The cause, Brown may get my job at the office. Affects my security, my self-esteem, fear. I'm resentful at Mrs. Jones. She's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. Affects my personal relationship, self-esteem, bracket fear again. I'm resentful at my employer. The cause, unreasonable, unjust, overbearing. Threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. Affects my self-esteem, bracket fear, security. I'm resentful at my wife. The cause, misunderstands and nags like Brown. Wants house put in her name. Affects my pride, personal sex relations, security, bracket fear.
So this is a very simple approach to a step 4. I want to make sure that I talk a little bit about the fact that the Keystone Group, which Rob and I are a part of, as well as others in this meeting as well, we have a set of worksheets, and those worksheets have a set of what I would call spreadsheets that you fill in the blanks. And that is a very detailed process of going through a step 4. The nice thing about it is that it pretty much covers all the bases for you. All you have to do is just kind of follow along either by column or row, depending on what you're working on, and you just fill in the blank as you go across and or down, and it will actually help you out. So if you are interested in those worksheets to be able to do a very detailed version of a step 4, if that's where you are, Rob can put that in the chat, and we can get that done. We do not actually cover that in this particular meeting, but nonetheless, those worksheets are there, and any one of us that are part of the Keystone Group would be happy to walk you through those steps if you so choose. But here's an idea here. You talk about who, or actually what, you're resentful at, what the cause of that resentment is, okay, and then how it affects you. And that's what we're talking about, how it affects you, not how somebody else's actions necessarily are you're focused on. What you're really focused on is how it affects you. And the idea here of the step 4 is not about the mechanics, even though you're going to go through a kind of a mechanical process of putting down your step 4. It's about the experience you get from it. And it's really about that experience. It's the knowledge you gain about yourself in regards to the ideas that have been holding you back, the blockages, and the things that are out there. And we are in fact talking a little bit beyond resentment, even though that's really where we're focused on. But we're going to get into some fears here as we go along, and harms, and our conduct, the things that we do in order to cause ourselves these resentments. And it's really important to re-emphasize that we're talking about you as the individual, not others. Rob?
Yeah, notice the fear, self-esteem and fear, they go hand in hand. You know, a lot of times what happens is that we have fear over things. And what happens is that we build it up in our head and it becomes a resentment, you know, and it's, you know, fear drives us in so many different ways that, you know, you've really got to be aware of it, you know. Now, Leo also mentioned the worksheets of the Keystone. There are many different type of worksheets that are out there. Joe and Charlie have worksheets. Most groups that are really big into the big book will have their own worksheets. So if you need the worksheets, as I say, I put it in the chat. It's great to take a look at them anyways, you know, get an idea of what's going on. So we're at the bottom of page 65, everybody. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that to this world and its people, we were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived.
Sure, we're a couple of things to think about here. One of which is that we're talking about things that are negative, that are taking up space in our heads rent-free. These are the things that, you know, whether it's hating someone or something, and it's things that keeps us up at night. So we're kind of talking about that kind of stuff. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to master these resentments as we go along. And it is important to emphasize here that the first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. It's a common pitfall. It is something that we do very easily and almost to it is to a fault, and that is to blame others for our problems, as opposed to doing that honest inward inventory of ourselves and figuring out where it is that we have gone wrong and what we have done wrong in order to cause others to retaliate and or lash out at us. I think you'll find that in most cases, something happened in your past that you caused the problems of others, meaning that they are coming back on you. The this does nothing but continue to fester. It keeps us, as they say, sore. And it wasn't until we removed all of that that we can actually truly have what is considered a win. These short-lived wins, in that we feel like that we've blamed somebody else, and that we, that's our problem, and somehow we feel good about it, is something that is short-lived and inaccurate. So it's a common misnomer. Rob?
Yeah, it could never be my fault. I'm too perfect. I never make mistakes. We roll things around in our head. Something happens and, it gets in our head. We roll it around, and the more we think about it, the more, we realize that our part was, well, we were perfect. Come on, we didn't do anything wrong, and, it just rolls around and rolls around in our heads until our part in it was so small and so minuscule that, we were just sweet as can be, we really got to take a look at it, find out where did we start that ball rolling? Was my expectations too much? Okay. Did you not do what I thought you were supposed to do? And that's why I'm angry? Things to look for. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die.
Yeah, this is kind of a foretelling of what is the outcome of not being able to rid ourselves of this anger and these resentments that we have. It is basically telling you, here's what will and could happen to you should you refuse to open up, to be honest, and to really look inwardly and come up with this really personal inventory that we're talking about of the things that you've done that have wronged others and things. So the deep resentment leads to futility and unhappiness. That's the the lighter side of things, and obviously the darker and or more serious side of things is that these resentments lead us back to drink, and by leading us back to drink, in a lot of cases, it can cause us great harm. And they just want to make those points here. It's really just trying to, in words, hit you over the head, if you will, in regards to here are the things that could happen to you if you don't do this, and trying to emphasize that you need to and you should want to. Rob?
Yeah, to the precise extent that we permit these. Nobody else has done it. We are permitting these things to hold these deep resentments, which is only making us unhappy. Who is making us unhappy? We are making ourselves unhappy. Okay, it's nobody else's fault. It's ours. We're holding on to things that once we take a look at it, we will realize we shouldn't be. We're unhappy for reasons that we don't need to be unhappy. And also they are fatal. They will kill us. It is mentioned 3 times, I believe, right? That one paragraph. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison.
Yeah, normal people deal with resentments on a normal basis. They can deal with them. They overcome them. They put them aside. They actually understand that they are of their own making, and process them. I think that that's true to some extent. I'm just going to say that people that are free of anger are very enlightened. They are in touch with their spiritual selves, and that's the goal that we're trying to get to, is that enlightenment, that tapped into feeling of a spiritual being, and that's important to kind of note here. Not everybody gets there. Even non-alcoholics have a hard time getting to that point if they're unwilling to take an honest inventory of themselves. And so I point that out just to say that all can suffer from this. Normal, I hesitate to say that but for alcoholics, these things are poison. And really, I guess what they're trying to say here is that for us, we have that added element of being an alcoholic. We have that outlet that we use in a negative manner, and that is to drink over our resentments, our fears, our harms, our conduct, etc. And in doing so, we are causing ourselves much greater harm than the person that is a non-drinker, non-alcoholic, that might also be afflicted with these resentments, etc. Rob?
Yeah, our sense of ease and comfort that we used to get with taking a couple of drinks is no longer, doesn't work for us anymore. So we have to come up with something else. We're near the bottom of page 66, everybody. We turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. And that state of wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about how we master these resentments and how we get over them, how we get beyond them, how that we are able to eliminate them and find some level of peace and serenity. And we're looking here at being very honest with ourselves, very pointed and bluntly. We're not doing half measures here. We are in fact going to really look at things from a very personal manner. Rob?
Yeah, they talked in the book about spiritual kit of tools that are laid at our feet. We're going to read the next paragraph, which is one of the spiritual tools. Now, Bill, who talks at the end of this meeting, always talks about he needs power tools. He doesn't need just a regular manual tools. He needs power tools. Okay. But this right here is one of the most important tools that we're going to have in our toolbox. And that is how to overcome resentments, how to master resentments. Okay. So pay attention, please. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done." We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one.
Yes. Important points here. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. Okay, other people can be sick and afflicted with this spiritual malady, this level of allowing resentments to control us, allowing our fears, our harms, our conduct to hold us back and create blockages, much like the gutter and the leaves that Rob was referring to before, getting things clogged up and preventing us from having that kind of spiritual moment that we're looking for, that loss of anger and resentment, and being able to finally be truly at peace and happy with yourself, and then in doing that, being able to do that for and with others. You know, the idea here is that, you know, somebody that's really sick, you're very patient with them. You're empathetic, in some cases sympathetic, and you really reach out to try and provide some level of aid, some kind of aid, and then there we are. I'll talk about this real quick. This is kind of what is known as the step 4 prayer, and that is, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And a quick pause, as Rob also likes to talk about, and that is to say this when you're in a situation with somebody that might be suffering from a similar situation as you, in that they have these resentments, and can provide you with all that's necessary in order for you to turn the tide, and be able to provide something very important to another person. Avoid retaliation or argument. We jump into arguments so darn fast, and the idea here is to really stop before you do that, because once you've jumped into retaliation and argument, you lose all, and I mean all, opportunity to be helpful. You basically have fallen into the pit, and there you go again. You've destroyed your chance of being helpful. Rob?
Yeah, you know, this is how we're going to do our fourth, but this is also how we're going to make sure that no resentments build up. We're going to look at people as sick people. They too are spiritually sick, just like we were. You know, so now we can use this prayer, okay, when something disturbs us. You know, as Leo said, I love the pause. Why? Because I used to react right away. You know, you say something, I got to say something back. Now I just pause, you know, because I avoid retaliation argument. It doesn't work. I dig my feet in, you dig your feet in. All we do is we see who can scream the loudest. Nobody wins. Okay. I also love here that we cannot be helpful to all people, but we can take a kindly and tolerant view of them. You know, and that's what it's all about. Is we can't help everybody. We learn that. Okay. But we can be kind to them. We can be tolerant of them. Okay. You know, we always talk about dividing the pie, and you know, there are certain things we have to do in life. Okay. And there are certain people we have to deal with, but there are other people we don't need to deal with, that we can walk away. Okay. So, you know, we can't be helpful to everybody. Everybody thinks that in God's world, we have to be, you know, we have to you know, be the whipping boy. You know, we have to take, you know, their grief and their aggravations and everything like that. No, we don't. Okay, it says later in the book that we are God's people. We don't bow before anybody. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation has not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and were willing to set these matters straight.
There's a couple important points here. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? It's very important that we keep that focus. You know, we're going to refer to this list a few times. I mean, it's an important list to have put down on paper, and it becomes a very effective tool to our recovery and our long-term sobriety. So we have to put out of our minds what others have done. This is the important part. Stop pointing fingers at other people and look inwardly at yourself. And again, where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Sure, it's not always our fault and just our fault. Other people are at fault as well, just like anything. Everybody's fallible, and everybody has a contributing element that goes into it. But where were we to blame? The inventory is your own. It is not somebody else's. It's not that. What are our faults? Get them, make sure that your faults are complete, that they're honest, and that you've got them listed. And can you admit that you were wrong honestly? And the last but not least at all, we were willing to set these matters straight. That's just like anything. It's that move from here's what's wrong. Here are my faults. Here are the things that I'm resentful for, and here are the reasons why I'm resentful for them. This is what I have contributed to the problems with regard to that, and I'm willing to go out and make these matters right. Set things straight and get beyond those resentments. It's an amazing accomplishment. You really do feel good about yourself when you get out there and start to set these matters straight. Rob?
And you feel good because you're not bound down by all these resentments and fears anymore. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune, which we felt we didn't deserve. But did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble.
Sure. Now we're talking about fears. We've moved beyond resentments. So we're talking more about our fears. They touches about every aspect of our lives in some manner or fashion. We either, it's kind of the fight or flight. We either deal with them in a negative and very aggressive way, and or we run from things, which is also just as bad. The misfortune we feel like we didn't deserve. That's kind of an inward, we're blaming somebody else that this, I didn't deserve this. You're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about others at that point, and that's not the right way to do it in a negative manner. It's an important thing to get control of and recognize. I think the big thing here is this self-recognition of these different elements. Rob?
Yeah, we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. Why? It's because it robs us of our joy. If we steal something, we're always looking over our shoulders. Did somebody see? Somebody coming after me? And fear is the same way. It just robs us of our joy. We're always worried about something. We don't want to be worried anymore. And I'm sure there is a spiritual tool for this too. We'll get to that in a moment. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse.
Yeah, it's kind of an idea here is that confidence over over self-reliance. Again, we are referring to the fact that we can't do this under our own power, and that's part of what we're trying to talk about here. We cannot overcome these fears just by ourselves. We need to have a higher power to assist us in doing so. Sure, self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough, and that's really the crux of this paragraph. Is that anything done on self is doomed to fall short and not quite get to the completeness and thoroughness that you're certainly looking for. Self-confidence really is good as far as it can go, but if you take it too far and become cocky, it's even worse. And again, that's when you get too full of yourself, and you lose sight of your higher power, and you're not tapped into your spiritual being, and it causes problems going forward. Rob?
Perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis. the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite self. We are in the world to play the role He assigned, just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us, and humbly rely on Him does He enable us to match calamity with serenity.
Yeah. And this is really what we're talking about, that trusting on something bigger than ourselves, that higher power that we're referring to. We are on a different basis. And now we are actually opening ourselves up to trust and relying upon our higher power to guide us and to assist us as we want to, as we move forward. We look at what He would have us do, what our higher power would have us do. And just to the extent that we think He would have us, and humbly rely on Him. Humbly is a very important word here, to be not cocksuredness, but humbleness. He's going to help us match calamity with serenity. And that's really what we're looking for, is to some peace and serenity, some absence of anger, absence of fear, reliance upon something that's bigger than ourselves, and really carrying that forward and treating others in such a way that there's not this anger and resentment that we're talking about. Rob?
Beautiful, Leo. I love this next paragraph too. Another spiritual tool. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear.
Yeah, that last part of the paragraph is important. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. And at once, we commence to outgrow fear. Once we've actually started to rely upon our higher power and bring Him into our lives, it begins to change us in a positive way. This is a way of strength. Faith is important, and all people with faith have courage, and having courage to face our resentments, our fears, our conduct, and our harms head on, and very, very much of ourselves is an important step in recovery. And this is really wanting to emphasize that, and why Rob likes this paragraph so much.
Another spiritual tool. When I have, look, I'm not perfect, okay? I still have fear that crops up in my life, but I now know what to do when it crops up. I ask God to remove it at once. Why do I ask God to remove it at once? Because I know He will protect me, okay? As long as I do His work well, okay, He's going to protect me, or that's what my God does. My God has got my back 24/7. I'm not going to run around, and chase somebody with a knife, okay? But the idea is that the situations that I'm scared of are large crowds. Why am I scared of large crowds? I don't know. I am, because I can't control the situation. Okay, so I ask God to remove my fear so that I can enjoy myself, that I can go to a baseball game, I can go to the hockey game where there's many people and just enjoy myself. Where before I'd be a nervous wreck, I would have to have quite a few drinks in order to get through the situation. Now I just say, God, please remove this fear, or my anxiety. Anxiety is the same thing. It robs me of joy. I always feel like something's going to happen bad. Spiritual tool. God, please take this away so that I can enjoy the day. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there, but above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes. Absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them?
Yeah, we'll answer that as we go along. We're not really picking sides here. I think it's an important point to make at the end of this paragraph. One school would allow us no flavor and the other for his fare, and the other would have us on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. So we're not really trying to tell you what's good and what's not good with regard to how much of sex that you're having and to the extent of sex that you're having. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to just basically say that there is an element here that can go awry, and that for the wrong purpose or reasons, we find ourselves doing sex in a manner in which is not positive, in fact, quite negative, as if we take a look at it. And really what we're just basically doing is saying that, you know, with our partners, we want to show the same amount of care, you know, outgrowing the fears that we have, any resentments that we might have, and doing something in a positive manner in which we actually make sex a positive thing and a wholesome and fulfilling kind of thing, and not using it as a bludgeon or a weapon going forward. Rob?
Yeah. Sex conduct, your sex life is none of my business. That's between you and God or your higher power. Okay? It has nothing to do with me. So we stay out of that. You want to bring Bill into it now, sir?
Sure, we are at that point. Let's go ahead and see if Bill, what Bill has to add to this. Thank you.
Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good job today. This is a real important part. This is basically the meat and potatoes of this program. When we get up here to step 4, that's usually when a lot of people disappear and they start shying away from the program because a lot of people don't want to do this. Nobody likes to look at themselves. And basically what Bill's doing here, he's giving us instructions here on how to do step 4. He explains it on page 64. He tells us in the narrative here on how to do column 1, column 2, column 3. He explains it. Then on page 65, he gives us a diagram. And he shows us this here little drawing here or whatever of these 3 columns with all these different rows in it and how we're supposed to do it. They've only got 3 columns here shown in the diagram. And then when we get to page 67, he gives us the narrative, the written instructions on how to do step 4. I mean, on how to do column 4, excuse me. And some people make more than 4 columns or 5 or 6 columns. And the way I understand the book, there's only 4 columns in there. And when you do this, it's a really, really good idea to go through this with a sponsor, somebody that's been through it, because it's really easy to get this stuff mixed up. And ask for help. Pray to your higher power, God, whatever you believe in, and ask for help. Because whatever pops up into your head, that's what you're supposed to write down there. And get all this stuff written down and have somebody explain it to you and walk you through it, because it's a lot better than if you just try to do this by yourself. And the reason we're doing this, we're trying to get rid of our resentments and our fears and all the harms that we did to other people. Because if my resentments and my fears are telling me what to do, God can't tell me what to do, because all that stuff is in my head and it's driving me crazy. And that's what's blocking me off from getting better. It's blocking me off from the sunlight of the spirit, whatever term you want to use. And when you go through this, it's a good idea to hide it. I've heard some horror stories of people where their significant other found their 4th step and things just didn't work out good because they did things that they shouldn't have done, you know. So it's a good idea to hide it or use some kind of code or whatever, because I've been in face-to-face meetings, and I mean, people have told some horror stories of things that happened. I mean, World War III literally started over somebody writing down things that they shouldn't have. So remember, be careful with this. This is for you to get better. And if anybody is supposed to see it, your sponsor is supposed to go over it with you. This is not for other people to see. This is so we can get better. This is not for somebody else to have some ammunition to pick on us. And it goes through here, and Bill is basically explaining what to do. And if you notice, when you get to page 67, he says, we resolutely look for our own mistakes. I always hear people say they look for their part. That's fine. If that's the way they understand it, that's fine. I'm just going along with what the book says. Nowhere in this chapter does it say for me to look for my part. It says I'm supposed to look for my mistakes. Where were we to blame? Or we're supposed to look for our faults. It doesn't say anything about part. If I'm looking for my part of a resentment, that means the other person has a part of it too. And that's not true. The resentment belongs to me. It's 100% comes from me. It's my reaction to what someone else did. Whether they did something wrong or right or whatever, or I think it's wrong, the resentment comes from me. It doesn't come from them. If they did something wrong, that's a wrong that they did. But the resentment is mine. I own the resentment 100%. So we have to get rid of this stuff, because if we don't, it's going to drive us crazy. And according to this book, this is the kind of stuff that makes us go back out and drink. So again, when you go through this, it's a really good idea to go through it with a sponsor, somebody that's been through it before, because it's real easy to mix all this stuff up and twist it and turn it the way you want, when you're supposed to be doing this because we're trying to find out what's wrong with us. Because most of us don't know that there's anything wrong with us when we first get here. We're blaming everything on everybody else. And step 4 is basically showing us what we did wrong. It's showing us our own mistakes. Okay, that's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Bill. I always like the fact that that's all I got. That's a lot.
It is. All right. Rob, let's go ahead and do the serenity prayer. We'll open things up.
You got it, sir. Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.